This has been a very interesting debate so far, and I think rather than being sniffy or patronising about the Mail on Sunday for this, we should thank them for raising this issue and for actually putting a voice to the concerns of a lot of people on this issue. Now, they're not concerns I actually share. I've always very robustly defended the 0.7% and will continue to do so. But I do think in this age of Trump politics or whatever it is, where a lot of the public are very disenchanted with politicians, it's not for us in here to be patronising and sniffy about those people who have a different view to us on this. We actually have to go out, rather than be rude about people who have these views, go out and win the debate on this issue. And as I said, I've always been very robust with my constituents. I find when you go back to constituents and point out the spending on HIV, AIDS, on fighting polio, on TB, people come back and say, well, of course, we want that to continue. It's the other bits that we don't want, i.e. the bad bits, the corrupt bits. Well, none of us want that, but we have to be honest about the fact that there is some corruption and there is some misuse in our aid budget. We have to address that. And I actually say to the Minister, I think he's done a good job on this. I think the department has done a good job on trying to tackle a lot of this, but there is still obviously work to do. And I think another point we have to make to constituents is that if we don't go out and if we don't as a nation project through foreign aid our own values and the values of Western democracies, then it will be left to others who perhaps don't share our values to spend money in poorer countries projecting values which we would not wish to see project any further. Again, that is a point that I find constituents are very responsive to. So we should accept the genuine concerns in this area and we must be prepared at all times to justify our spending and to improve it where we can. Now, I am going to probably to some groans, say a little something about Palestinian funding to the Palestinian territories. And actually, I took the Minister's intervention earlier, and I think he is right in much of what he has said, in that the department has tried to get a grip on this and they are keen to continue to do more. But I think there continue to be concerns in this regard that whilst British money, we might be able to say, is not directly funding individual terrorists in prison, it is perhaps displacing other funding in the PA General Fund or elsewhere that is being used to fund terrorists, and we should be concerned about that. And we should always, and I welcome in the Jewish Chronicle last week an article saying that the Secretary of State and the Department are reviewing this. And it is, as the Honourable Lady mentioned, it is the case that there are people who are engaging in terrorist activity, including Hamza Abu Aadi, who last year confessed that the reason he took part in the behaviour... I will give way.
Corrected by the Minister that UK government funding is not, for example, paying the salaries of Palestinian prisoners. He's now conjecturing something else. We're on reflection, wouldn't he and others think that hijacking this important debate to give effectively cover to the Netanyahu-Lieberman regime is a gross abuse of what is a very important subject?
Do you know, I mentioned patronising and sniffy earlier, and that was a prime example of it, and it was so patronising it's not worthy of a response. Members are allowed to come to this chamber and speak as they wish on an area of international aid, and this is an area of international aid, British taxpayers' funding. So the Honourable Gentleman can patronise all he wants, but I won't be silenced from saying what I think I am entitled to say in this chamber on this issue. I give way.
It's not just supporters of the Netanyahu government who are concerned about this. The central point is that the Palestinian Authority receives our aid money because they've signed a memorandum of understanding with DFID, which is underpinned by the renunciation of violence and a commitment to peace. Now, that's directly contradicted by funding terrorists, whether or not the money comes directly from the UK, and it's directly contradicted by the PA's routine incitement of violence. And on both those grounds, what the Minister ought to be doing is examining this in much greater detail.
I'm conscious of time, and I will give way to the Minister perhaps in a moment. I think the Honourable Gentleman is entirely right on a lot of that. And indeed, the Overseas Development Institute I quoted earlier stated that our aid money to the PA had failed to promote peace and peaceful attitudes. So there is more to be done in this example. I was mentioning a particular terrorist who confessed the reason he engaged in that behaviour was to get these payments. And I do also want to mention some NGO funding, and in particular the Ibda'a Cultural Centre, who will receive £5,600 £602 from DFID this year, who last year hosted an exhibition for honouring martyrs, including Mohanad Al Halabi, who killed 1 and injured 11. We do have to be careful in this regard on where our money is going and always be prepared to review. And I will give way to the Minister out of respect.
Can I say that we take the issue of incitement very seriously indeed? And with respect to the point he made about the Jewish Chronicle, I assure him that both I and the Secretary of State keep this matter under review continually, precisely because it is so controversial. And with respect to the other matters that have been raised in respect of integration that I understand that I'm receiving a delegation from the Honourable Member for Dudley to discuss that very matter on Wednesday.
I thank the Minister, and I do hope he will look at the Ibda'a Cultural Centre grant I mentioned. I do think the last minute or so want to talk about some of these coexistence projects. We had a wonderful meeting last year in Jerusalem with a group of Palestinian and Jewish young people from MEET, who are the Middle East entrepreneurs of tomorrow. It was a really inspiring meeting. Palestinian youth, Jewish youth, being educated together. They both were very open about what they thought about each other beforehand and how this would help bring them together. We should be supporting projects like that, as we should in these last 46.5 seconds, be hopefully supporting Save a Child's Heart, who I am proud to serve as a UK patron of. They're a wonderful child. I was very moved when we visited last year, particularly talking and meeting with the Gazan children, young Gazan children who received their treatment there. This is an organisation that actually supports heart surgery, not just to Palestinian children, mainly Palestinian children with Israeli doctors, but also Tanzanian children, Iraqi children, trains their doctors, trains their nurses, and is a project that has a reach beyond actually just Israel and the Palestinian territories. And I would hope that this is a project, one of the projects we could look at funding in the future.
David Lammy.